as most baseball fans are aware, Ronald Acuna and Mike Soroka are two of the Braves' best young players that definitely project to be Hall of Famers when it's all said and done. But there's a third prospect, and I imagine most people are aware of. 23-year-old Ozzie Albies is establishing himself as one of the best young, all around baseball players in the game. And I'm just going to get a little into that in a bit. But right now I'm going to start off by saying it is Monday, June 1st, 2020 in this quarantine. I'm James Sims. I'm originally from Atlanta, so I'm going to try my hardest once again not to be as biased as I could be on a topic like this. But I do think that if Ozzie Albies was on any other team, I would still consider him elite for what he's done at such a young age. So just to give you a little bit of background, of course, Ozzie Albies, he's a 5'5", 5'6", second baseman, one of the best in defense. He comes from Curaçao, an island in the Caribbean, I think, it was previously under Dutch occupation. But Ozzie Albies rose his way to becoming one of the league's top prospects. He was signed in 2013, and I think he was one of the top prospects in 2016 before he eventually was brought up by the Atlanta Braves organization to play in the 2017 season. In the 2017 season, he came in about halfway through. He would come in at 20 years old and played in 57 games where he would have 62 hits, more hits than games played, as a switch hitter. He would finish with a 286 batting average at 6 home runs and 28 RBIs for a 60-game stretch. That's not bad, especially for someone that's 20 years old. And I guess another argument that I like to throw out here with a lot of these young players is that it's impressive if you make a professional league at a young age. If you're not if your rookie year isn't as impressive as someone else's when they're 4 years older than you, I still don't think that takes away from the younger player that made it to the pros at a younger age. I think it gives them a head start, and I think it's a very fair head start. I think it's fair game once you decide to make yourself a pro. If you make it to the league at a younger age, to me, I think it resonates better with me that when younger players get to it. So I mean, he made his presence heard. And when he was first promoted to the Atlanta Braves, he was the youngest MLB player that was at that level, that was starting on an actual lineup. So really kind of moving into his second season, Ozzie Albies had an amazing start, and then where he was eventually voted to be an all-star. The second half kind of fell off a bit, but so in 158 games, he would have 167 hits, still more hits than games played. He would finish with a 261 batting average after batting over 300 for the first half of the season, and then he fell off the second half. He would finish with 24 home runs and 74 RBIs and 105 runs on the season, where he was eventually voted to be an all-star. And right then, that was also when Ronald Acuna's rookie year was, and when Mike Soroka was playing in his first games. So, I mean, Ozzie Albies had already put himself on that all-star level before Acuna even did. And he's a couple months older. He came in a little earlier. But yeah, so that's what Ozzie Albies was doing, establishing himself as one of the best two-way players in the game, of course, because he was up for consideration for Gold Glove his second year and up for consideration for Silver Slugger, but he had the second half, which of course happens with a lot of players when they play their first full season in the league. So I mean, I wouldn't put it against him considering he was 21 when he was doing it, but he had shown players that when he's on his game, he's a very tough opponent to face. He can be very intimidating as a switch hitting player who, when he bats from his right side, bats incredibly well, but from his left side, he hasn't really been as strong. But of course, he's still a very, very young baseball player with his best years ahead of him. I mean, considering Pete Alonso is a 24, 25-year-old rookie, same with Aaron Judge, I still think it's important to note that Ozzie Albies was 21 at the time, and he was still an all-star. He was a 21-year-old all-star for the Atlanta Braves when Ronald Acuna and Mike Soroka were on the same team, and they still didn't. So, I mean, I think a lot of that does matter, and I think it played into people starting to see this kid as a young elite talent. And then this past year in Atlanta, he would play 160 games, where he would lead the National League in hits with 189. And he would lead in at-bats with 640. He would finish with a 295 batting average, 352 on-base percentage with 24 home runs and 86 RBIs. He wasn't voted an All-Star that year because his first half this past year wasn't as strong as the first half the year before. But by the end, he was eventually named a Silver Slugger at his position, and yeah, he was given the recognition that he really kind of needed, especially at this point in his career. He's still 22 at this time, and alongside a Ronald Acuna in the batting lineup, he's shown that he was a very formidable batter to kind of go up against. He also finished tied for the league in doubles. He had 43 doubles on the season, which is he's averaging a double every 4 games, which is kind of ridiculous. Or yeah, that's about a little over. But that's what Ozzie Albies is doing on a game in game out basis, because he's not only doing it from the hitting standpoint, he's still one of the best defensive second basemen in all of baseball. And I think because he was in the running, he was in the top 3. He was one of the finalists to be selected as a Gold Glove, but eventually he didn't make it. But that's kind of what Ozzie Albies is doing. So the reason I have him in this elite category, because he's had one All-Star season and he didn't really finish out in this past year. He didn't put up crazy numbers except for leading the National League in hits. I'll still go on to say that the reason he's here is because he's still an incredibly young player and playing at the level of these All-Stars that are a lot older than him. There aren't that many players that are his age that are leading the National League in hits after the amazing year that he had before him. He's been in the league. This will be his 4th year in the major leagues this season, and he'll only be 23, which is saying a lot for how good he is. And I mean, he's been an elite player for 2 of those 3 years that he's been playing, and more than likely, once he puts it all together, because he's still a young player, I think that's one of the issues you see with young players, that it takes him a second to put it together, but Ozzie Albies has had his time. He's put a lot of it together, and with this extended offseason, I want to see how he comes back, and we'll see if he's as elite, see if he can make that jump into the territory that Ronald Acuna has already entered, because Acuna has already passed him, eclipsed him, but he's the best player of this young generation. But Ozzie Albies definitely has a claim to say that he's one of the best players out of this young crop of the let the kids play era of baseball. I mean, yeah, even if you watch him, he's a fun guy. He's really cool. He and Acuna kind of have that narrative of just being best friends, because Acuna doesn't speak a lot. He doesn't speak a lot of English. I mean, he's getting better every day. But, I mean, Acuna and Ozzie Albies, I mean, they kind of have that. I mean, they're both pretty fluent in Spanish. That's their first language. And they're both the same age, and they're both dominating the league at such a young age, so they understand the high level, and they hold each other to a high level and get better and compete with each other to make the team better every single day. And before this past season, after Ozzie Albies was named an All-Star, before this recent season where he led the league in hits, he was signed by the Braves to kind of a criminal contract, where he was signed to 5 years, $5 million a year, but at the same time, I guess he had his reasons for signing that contract. I guess the Braves really want to keep that core intact. I imagine they're probably going to lowball Mike Soroka too, to keep all these young elite players together on the same organization. But I like the move by the Braves, and as of right now, they have Ozzie Albies under contract for the next 6 seasons, and I know that he is going to be amazing in those 6 seasons. And by the time it's done, he'll still be one of the league's best. So when we're talking, and of course in past videos, I've went over and over again about how I think with the Braves farm system and the fact that they're still an elite team now, and a lot of their best players are the players that were most recently brought up, I think this Braves team has amazing potential. I think they'll be the most dominant team in the 2020s, having a similar reign to what they had in the 1990s. And Ozzie Albies is going to be a really big part of that. He's one of the league's best, and he's one of the league's best defensive infielders. He's one of the league's best switch hitters. One of the league's best right-handed hitters when he goes up against left-handed pitching, because that was a stat. He's the league's best hitter last season against left-handed pitching, or at least he had the highest batting average at least. But that's the player he is. You never really know what you're going to get with Ozzie Albies. And if you're a baseball fan, I imagine he's most definitely on your radar. And if you're watching the NL East, if you're a fan of the Phillies, Mets, Nationals, or Marlins, I know you watch Ozzie Albies. But I mean, if you don't, if you're an AL fan, I would recommend watching Ozzie Albies when you watch Ronald Acuna Jr., Mike Soroka, watch these young core players play together. And like I say with a lot of these young players, it's good to see these players at a young age, see them getting better and learning and growing from their weaknesses. And Ozzie's definitely one of those players. He plays almost every single game of the season, shows up, does what he needs to do, doesn't mess up often. And I mean, the Braves have been a playoff team for the past 2 seasons, and a very, very strong National League East. By the way, they've been the National League East champions the last couple of years, and the only team better in the regular season has been the Dodgers. And just the dominance that the Braves have consistently shown, I think a lot of that success can be attributed to Ozzie Albies as well. So if you actually listen to this, all 10 and a half minutes of this, I really appreciate everything. And I hope you have an amazing day. I appreciate it. And with that, I'm going to sign off by saying peace.